Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Eborn, and I am here today on behalf of the marketing team with School Health. I want to start off by thanking you for joining us and participating in our webinar with Holly Myers, who is a special education teacher at Dutch Fork High School in South Carolina. And we've also got Joyce Whitby, who is the ed technologist and president of Innovations for Education. In this webinar, we will be discussing ways to prepare students at all learning levels for life after school. And of course, we know that this year, educators have been challenged by limited out-of-school opportunities, and teachers have been working during this time to create safe and meaningful work-based learning opportunities, both remotely in the classroom. So this is, I think, a good time and an exciting time to bring this topic up for everyone. Before I turn the time over to Holly and Joyce, I would like to review a few quick things about today's webinar. First, we will not be taking audio questions, but you can submit your questions through the questions interface in GoToWebinar. You can submit your questions anytime during the presentation. Holly and Joyce will take around 45 minutes for their presentation, and after they are finished, we will be answering questions. We'll also possibly take a break during the presentation to address any questions that may come up. So if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask, just go ahead and push those through that questions interface and GoToWebinar. Of course, this webinar will be recorded, and a link to it will be posted on our schoolhealth.com website. We will also email the link to everyone who has registered and everyone who is attending live so that you can play it back in the future if you'd like to do that. Everyone who attends today's webinar will be receiving a certificate of attendance for joining us today. You should receive that in your email later today. And lastly, if you are having technical difficulties with either the audio or the visual portion of today's webinar, please call GoToWebinar directly at 855-352-9003. Again, that number for GoToWebinar is 855-352-9003. And now I will turn the time over to Holly and Joyce.
Super. Hi, thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate that introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Joyce Whitby. And both Holly Myers and I are really excited to be doing this presentation for you here today. And it's really, we just want to stop and say thank you to School Health for making this all possible. And so let's get started. We're going to talk about teaching work-based learning while remote. As you can see here, we're diving into this topic, and there's so many different types of things to think about, a real huge undertaking, and I'm sure you're dealing with this if you have students with transition goals. So all the different types of careers that that we can be preparing students for, addressing independent living skills as well. It really can get to be overwhelming. So hopefully we're going to help make some sense of that for you by sharing some materials that were developed by folks from Education Associates, and they are working with School Health on offering up 2 different curriculums, one of which is Project Discovery. And Project Discovery entails career exploration and career awareness and job skill development for over 100 careers, and also Achieve Life Skills, which include job prep and employability, as well as independent living skills. It is really quite a comprehensive curriculum, and our intention today is to really get into how it works for teachers versus giving you a product pitch. So we're going to try and keep that light, but I do want to give you a little bit of a background so that as Holly shares with you some of the materials that she's used with her students, you'll have some foundation to fit that into. So Project Discovery itself has been around for over 40 years, and that is really because they have had a real adherence to hands-on as the core philosophy behind it. So that's why it works. It is written by teachers for teachers, and it really has all of those things that you would normally include built on into it. So I know that when I was in the classroom, I was the one who was staying up late the night before, cutting out images from magazines and things like that. All of the pieces are in here. So you don't have to do that piece of it, but it does provide you the opportunity to sort of make it your own, be able to include your expertise and also accommodate the different types of students, the differently abled students that you have in front of you, and just help them understand, create a pathway for them to jobs that they will love. And you know what they say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's what we're hoping for. But beyond just that, we can really get excited about it because Project Discovery works. We have seen increases on test scores and both on knowledge base and competency base. So we've seen the skill sets go on up. And that really translates into reduced dropout rates, along with increased graduation and increased job placements. So we're really excited about that. And there's a couple of components that we think will help you get a good understanding of it. First of all, they are hands-on kits. So they come in great big Tupperware bins with, you might store your holiday decorations in for in the cellar or in the attic. And in those bins, we have the real tools of the trade. So students are working with their hands and they're using real materials. It's very nicely organized. The project discovery, some sample titles you can see here: grocery clerking, carpentry, table service, animal care, small engine repair. Comes with a real live working small engine. And it's got all of those pieces that you need in order to have students go through actual types of jobs for those areas. I will also say that in 2020, we're very proud to say that this material was endorsed by the Council of Administrators of Special Ed. So the CASE group has a very rigorous endorsement process, and they looked at the adapted career exploration series, which is what we'll be talking about, and they put it through the test. It's almost like a little mini dissertation where you have to prove why you developed it and then show the outcomes, and they make you defend your case. So it is a very big honor for us, so we're really pleased about that. We're also going to be talking about Achieve Life Skills, which are those soft skills. So we can teach students how to do a job, and with the Achieve Life Skills, we want to help them learn how to keep the job, right? Get the job and keep the job. So we'll talk a little bit about job prep and employability and independent living as we get to the end. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Holly and let her get into showing you how she's used this. And then at the end, I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the bundles that we have that are pretty special for you through the folks at School Health. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce my friend, Holly Myers, who has been in the classroom over 27 years. She was even awarded the Teacher of the Year Award in 2008, but she is a trained and mentored applied behavioral therapist and quite skilled in working with students on the autism spectrum. Holly, I'm going to let you jump on in and tell a little bit about your students at Dutch Fork High School, which is in District 5 of Lexington and Richmond counties in South Carolina. Are you there, Holly?
I am. Thank you so much, Joyce.
Well, my pleasure. And we will just say to the folks that your video is not working today, technology as it is, but audio is just fine. And we've got lots of visual supports here. So I'm going to douse my video so that folks can listen to you, but I'm going to be right here and help you with some clicking.
Thank you so much. Hello, and thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about what's going on in my classroom setting. Here at Dutch Fork High School, I am, as Joyce said, I'm working on year 28 in teaching, but I've been using the Education Associate kits for right at 15 years now. I got in on the ground floor when Education Associates was first being introduced in South Carolina, and was super, super excited because we were struggling at that point with coming up with how to incorporate job skills for my moderate and mild ID students. And then I had several students with autism also mixed in with my group. So it made for an interesting teaching group our student population. But we were really able to, with the kids, we were really able to open up a new world for my students. So they helped tremendously. So as I said, it's been about 15 years, I believe, with using the kits. And several years after I used them, I stepped into the role of being a trainer for education associates, and I have loved it. But my true first love is being in the classroom and actually working with the students. So here at Dutch Fork, last school year, I had a classroom of 12 students, ranging from moderate intellectually delayed to mild intellectually delayed. And again, I had, of my 12, I had 4 that were classified as autistic. So a good range of students to work with and introduce this with. So now I'm going to go ahead and if you want to advance, thank you. What I really want to talk to you about is teaching work-based learning remotely. Last spring, when we very suddenly were sent home from school and the schools were closed, we frantically began figuring out what we could do and what we needed to get prepared. Here at Dutch Fork High School, we were given 48 hours notice that we were going to be sent home and we were going to have to teach remotely from home. At this point, I did not have a visual platform. I had never used Google Meets with my students, Google Classroom, which is something we use here in the district where teachers post assignments and students turn in work digitally. That was something I had never even remotely considered using with my students with special needs. So I truly had to jump in, dive head first and learn as I went. Now, all the students in my classroom are very skilled at logging into a Google Meet session, participating in Google Meets, answering questions, submitting their work digitally. We have all grown a lot over the last 6 to 8 months, and I'm very excited about that. But one of the biggest areas that we struggled with was how do we get the work-based skills in? I mean, it was, we quickly figured out how to share our screen with our students, how to present lessons and activities from our biology curriculum, from our math curriculum, from our ELA storybooks we were reading with the students, but work-based skills were different. And I was very lucky because I already had some background with using the Education Associates job skill kits. So it worked out a little easier for me, and I kind of became the go-to person. Everybody was emailing and texting and saying, how are you covering this? How are you addressing job skills? How are you addressing employability skills with your students while you're out? So I was happy to share the curriculum I was using, which was the Education Associates curriculum, with other teachers here in our school. And we realized that because it comes with the flash drive and we had the digital component, it was much easier to share that with the students at home, and they were still able to participate in several of the lessons. Joyce, if you want to go ahead and advance.
There we go.
Thank you. So we know that the importance of work-based learning is that it gives the students the opportunity to connect things that they're doing at school and in the classroom to what they're going to need to do beyond school. The couple pictures you see here are my students practicing a stocking the shelves activity in the top picture. I believe he is stocking the shelves with gift cards, not unlike you would see at Target or Walmart, and simply created a pegboard and had the pictures laminated of the various different types of gift cards. You could see the bottom section there, pens, different colored ink pens. The other side has seed packets, different types of seed packets on it. And so the students practice matching the items to stock the shelves. I think in a later picture, you'll also see students practicing stocking shelves in a classroom setting with actual like canned goods that you would have in a grocery store. The bottom picture for my students with more interested in outdoor work activities, we practiced and used the greenhouse unit in the classroom, and then we were able to get outside to, and that was this fall, by the way, when we got back in school on our hybrid schedule, and they were replacing the plants in all the planters at the front of our school. So that was a great hands-on experience for them. But because we had already previously done the greenhouse unit and the grocery clerking units, my students were able to take those skills from last fall when we did them to this fall of this school year and apply what they had learned to stock the shelves and plant the plants in the front of the school. So it did give them some ability to explore those career interests. The two guys in the bottom picture had absolutely no interest in greenhouse work at all when we were going through the unit, but they were excited to be able to go outside and plant the plants in the front of the school because they already had that foundation. And if you could have heard the conversations that were going on about, I can see the roots and I can look, we're gonna put this fresh soil around it so that it'll have its nutrients, because plants need sunlight, water, and soil to grow in. So it was so amazing to hear all of that being carried over from the previous school year to the next school year. So it definitely makes an impression on the students. Joyce, you can move ahead. Thank you. So here at Dutch Fork, we had some significant challenges at the start of the school year. Several students were still trying to decide, am I choosing virtual? Am I going to go back face to face? And we were on the hybrid schedule. Parents were juggling schedules, trying to figure out how it was all going to get done. So when we first came back, I had some students 2 days a week, and because my class size was so small, I was able to offer my students in my self-contained setting to come in 4 days a week. Wednesday was a mandatory Google Meet day for my students because that was the day they did the deep cleaning in the schools. And I know everybody's has something different going on right now. So our struggle was, are we going to be able to get students off campus to practice these job skills, or do we need to keep them right here in our classrooms, and how are we going to address that, and what are they going to do on the days that they're at home and we are virtual? So we got a little creative here, and we had two restaurants here, Eggs Up Grill and CC's Pizza, that were willing to allow our students to continue coming in, of course, with parental permission. And they agreed to follow all of the district standards and guidelines, as well as the CDC guidelines for masking and social distance while they were at work. So we were able to get permission for a couple of our students to go out there to those two restaurants, and you can see the tasks that they were involved in doing. But this year was the first year that the students in my ID self-contained classroom were offered the opportunity to go off campus. Typically, the students that go off campus to work are our what we call our multi-categorical students. So they're possibly a slightly higher functioning than the students in my classroom. Not to say that my students aren't totally capable, just academically, they may be a little more advanced. So we were super excited this year that I was able to get 3 of my students going off campus for job activities. And that started by having our students go into the cafeteria here at our own school and demonstrate that they could carry over some of the table service and food service tasks that we had practiced with our job skill kits. And that they knew the importance of keeping the environment they were working in clean. They knew the importance of washing their hands. They knew how to follow the instructions for completing the different activities involved in the kitchen cafeteria setting. So we were able to demonstrate that to our job coaches. And so then they were able to take that skill and take us out into other elementary schools where we could work in the cafeterias at other schools with other people. And they actually served the fruit cups. They package the silverware, they sweep and mop the floor in the cafeteria and in the kitchen setting, and they actually use the sanitizing station in the back of the kitchen to sanitize the trays and the utensils that are used in the elementary schools. So they are thrilled to have those opportunities. And what we found is for the districts that weren't able to get their students out into the population, they were, for the ones that couldn't go out, because we were using other elementary schools in the district that were following all of the same standards we had in place, they were willing to, the parents were willing to have our students go out, the district officials were willing to let our students go out so they could still get those opportunities. So if you haven't explored job locations like other schools in your district, that is definitely something I would look into. That has been very beneficial for our guys. And one of the other special things we've done is I have one student that goes to the special services offices for our district, and they do the custodial type activities there. They empty the trash, they sweep, they vacuum, they dry mop the floors, they clean the windows and the mirrors in the bathrooms. And that has been a great experience for them as well. And to start that one off, we completed the cleaning maintenance job skill kit in the classroom prior to them going out. Okay, Joyce.
Yep.
These are some meaningful job training in the classroom setting. These are some of the activities. Again, you're seeing a student with the stocking the shelves in a couple of different formats there. We had the students going out last year and this year into the cafeteria setting, and we assisted the custodians with wiping down all of the tables. Part of that process was they had to gather all the materials, they had to get the water and the cleaner mixed up so that they could wipe the tables down. They had to get the rags that we needed to wipe the tables down, and then at the end they have to dump everything and clean out the buckets and get them ready so that they can be used the next day as well. So it's not just actually doing the job skill, it's the whole process that they have to go through. And then with food service, one of the activities set up in my classroom is just set up like a bulletin board where they plan an attractive plate. And that is one of the activities in the food service kit that they were able to do. And I did want to share with you recently, I just had a student that had to unexpectedly go out. He was not sick, thank goodness, but had family members. And so he was attending my classroom virtually. And we were right in the middle of going through table service, our job skill kit. And it was amazing how easy it was to have him join as a Google Meet, which is the platform we use here in Lexrich 5. And I shared my screen with the visual schedule of the tasks, super easy because it's on a flash drive. And he was able to follow the sequence. So while my students were in the classroom practicing using the materials to set a table, he was able to do the exact same skill at home. I just had to instruct him to go into his kitchen and gather all his materials from his kitchen. So he was able to use the picture symbols to go around his kitchen and get the plate and the fork and the spoon and the knife and the napkin and the glass and the bowl, and was able to complete a place setting and show me with his camera how he could do that. And I was able to give him credit and grade him on his progress using the rubric included in the curriculum. And so he was able to keep up with the class. So when he came back the next school week, he didn't miss all those lessons that I had to make up. I was able to include him all the way through and have him complete the lesson. So it was a wonderful experience, and it just is further proof that teaching the job skills and the work-based curriculum remotely is doable and very attainable. All right. This is a picture of one of my students practicing some money skills on the computer with another teacher remotely. And one thing I wanted to point out with that is that all the materials in the kit, all of the paper materials in the binder are also digital materials on the flash drive, which makes it super easy to share. As I said before, I use Google Class Meet when I do the activities. And I had several parents that attended Google Meets with the students, and they were not always there. But, you know, they would come in and out and on the camera and off the camera, checking on their students' progress, making sure they were engaged, which I dearly loved because that helped me out a lot when we were at home and on Wednesdays when we had to have our Google Meets. And so they were able to see exactly what the students were working on. And I can't tell you the positive feedback I got from all of my parents with how much they enjoyed seeing what their child was capable of. And I had a couple of parents, they were like, wow, I never knew my child could do that. And it opened their eyes a little more, as you know, with the home and school connection. So that was definitely another positive there. And then a lot of the activities that are in these kits that come with the job skills, any job skill, are readily available in most home settings. You do have to know your students. You have to have that relationship with the parents that you can ask, do you have these items handy? Is this something that I can, you know, coordinate with you to have the student practice this at home? I'm lucky that I have a very good relationship with all of my students' parents, and I'm able to just text them or call them or email them to quickly find out what they can and can't do and what's available at home. That also helped me prepare for what I needed to send home with them. For example, I was doing grocery clerking, and I wanted them to be able to practice bagging groceries. one of my students was still a little rocky with getting the heavier items in the bag first, and then putting your bread and eggs on top. And they were just kind of just putting it in the bag, whatever they grabbed first. So we were practicing that. So I just emailed the parent and said, hey, next time you go to the grocery store, can you have them, when you bring the items home, can you just unload them on your table or a counter and have them practice bagging those items? And here are the cues we use. And I sent the visual schedule from the kit about how to bag heavy and light items. And they, were able to use that, pull it up on their child's computer, and they practiced it, and they sent me pictures and a little short 30-second video of them doing the skill, and I was able to give them some credit. I was able to document their progress with that. So it was a great way for us to interact, and we all had to be very creative during that time. I'm very thankful now that we are back to 5-day instruction here in Lex Rich 5 in South Carolina. So I do have my students in the classroom every day now. So it does make it easier, but it was doable when they were at home. So positive impacts for our students. I mean, it's very evident in the pictures. They gain that real world experience. They get to explore all of their interests. They get to explore their abilities. What are they capable of doing? It lets you know what supports need to be in place. Which students do I need to have the visual cues ready for? Which students can have written out instructions to follow? Which students can just practice the skill one time and they have it and they don't need any supports? They know what the steps are. And it does show the students what an employer would be expecting them to be able to do in the different workplace activities. So tons of positive impacts for my guys. You can tell we love doing a lot of hands-on things, and we take pictures of everything because we like to display them all over the school and show everybody what we're doing. So I'm never out of pictures. But this was some samples from our greenhouse unit. They were identifying parts of a plant. They were, we planted seeds and we charted their growth so that they could see the difference between what the seed looked like, what the sprout looked like. And then as the plant grew, we were able to work in some math skills there with measuring. So. And these are my guys that are now off campus for their job skills. They were working, this is actually in the cafeteria at the elementary school. And looks like they were in cleanup mode on these pictures. But I do have others where they are serving food into the individual containers because everything has to be served individually now. In our district instead of scooping from the big pans like we had previously been doing. But Miguel, my students worked on his mopping skills, and you can see they are learning to use the dishwasher in the kitchen setting. And then this last part, this was something that we had some collaboration on. Several people had a hand in this, and it's just an amazing tool to have, where we looked at every task in every kit and broke it down into what do we do in class, which everything is, we're capable of doing all of it in the classroom setting. But what can be done when we're in distance learning, when they're not with us for face-to-face instruction? And when we're in a hybrid setting, they're in school a few days, but they're out of school a few days, how would that look? When I was hybrid with my students, one of the things that I focused on was getting the actual hands-on practicing setting the table, practicing plating an attractive meal using the food models with the hands-on activities. But when they went home during the hybrid and the virtual days, I would have them work on the worksheets, build their dictionary, and do some of the other tasks that were embedded into the curriculum. So when they came back, they still had that practice with the terminology, the new vocabulary, and they were still able to work on those skills. They also had a bingo game. I sent that home and said, oh, if you have a game night, here's the set so everyone can play the game, and that was another way for them to help practice the vocabulary being used. And then, of course, when we're back in class, we went back to doing the hands-on activities. So a lot of great activities, but just the breakdown, and this was just a great tool to have so that it was all spelled out for you. You didn't have to think through anything. It's all right there, ready for you to pick up and run with.
Awesome. Awesome. And this is, I'll just chime back on in here again and just say, this is really something that we're just so appreciative of, Holly, because you had really stepped up and helped us outline what we needed to do to share with folks around the country. And honestly, that's what we spent the bulk of, I want to say like April and May and June. We were just like, okay, how are people doing this? Let's figure it out. And so we were able to identify the types of things that we needed to provide for folks as we moved along. I think we've come to a point where we can maybe entertain some questions. And I did not see any popping along here to me quite yet, but if anybody's got some questions, I've got the chat and the Q&A open. It was just kind of just a little interim period. Holly, I do have a question for you because you mentioned that you have a great relationship with your parents of your students, and just talk a little bit about what their reaction was to some of these activities that you had their children doing at home. Because there's always, like, in my memory, there were two kinds of parents of the students in my class. The ones who were just, going to do it for their kid, right? They're like, my child can't do all of that. I'm gonna have to help them. And then there were the ones who said, oh, sure, they know how to do that. I just don't let them do it all, things like that. So what was your experience with those parents?
Well, I will say I had a couple of parents that were like, absolutely not, my child's never going to be able to do this. And it did take me, when I had them in class, actually, I videotaped them doing what they told me they could not possibly do. And I sent that video home and they were like, no way. So I really think in a lot of ways, it was a good experience for my parents because it opened several of their eyes. So, you're going to have to push them just a little bit more because I think they're pulling the wool over your eyes some. And I would always ask my parents to not just send me an email and say, yeah, they did this. I was like, can you just snap a quick picture or do a 5-second video or, something, or pull it up on Google Meet and let me watch them do it. Just so I can make sure they were actually doing it.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. And I think that Ryan may have captured a couple of other questions. So if you want to feed some of those on over to us, Ryan.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of questions that have come in here. Diane asks, due to financial circumstances, did you have any families, Holly, that may not have had the materials that were needed for activities? And if so, how did you address that situation?
I did have one family that I knew was struggling, and I sent what they needed with them. In the classroom, we have mock grocery store set up where we had, we actually had actual containers of food from the grocery store, like canned items and things, corn and green beans and things like that, that we would go purchase when they were on sale. And then when we had boxes of cereal at home, we just saved the box and just taped it up really well. So I sent home a couple of grocery bags home, and I just had, we had what we called drive-bys in the front of the school. And I would have the parents, I'm like, I'm going to be at school on this date from this hour to this hour. And if you want to drive by, I'll have all the materials packaged and ready for you. And so kind of based on whatever that student needed, I got materials together for them. And then I had others that were like, oh yeah, we're good to go. We'll run with this. So.
Great, thank you. I've also got a question here from Sherry, wondering how much time you spend on the day, during the day with these activities. Is it a class period? Is it more? How much time would you say you spend?
Oh, 1 second.
I know she's got some, she's in her school right now, so there's some buzzers going on off. So I'll just, I want her to come back and talk about the time question from Sherry, but I will also add that on the last question from Diana, the materials come in both a digital and hard copy fashion. So in some cases where we've had parents that didn't have accessible bandwidth and so forth, we also were able to make up packets for them at the school. And I've had districts where some kids are working on electronically with Google Meets or whatever you might have, Zoom, and other places where they needed to provide them with packets of information. And so that was, a nice way to remain equitable, right? That everybody had access to the same content, regardless of what device or how they were going to access it. And that's what came to my mind as well. And I love the idea about having other things like the bags of groceries or mock groceries. I guess we had a box of cereal that was just kind of done. Okay.
Absolutely. With the time question, yes, I do a class period. So we are on an A-B schedule here at my high school. So on A days, I work on independent life skills, and on B days, I work on job skills. A lot of times you see overlap. Like we were doing the table service job skill kit. Well, that is a skill you would use in the home in that you're setting a table, you're clearing your table. So we worked on it that way during the independent life skills on my A days. And then on the B days, we addressed the more formal setting like we would be in a restaurant. And we had a little corner of the classroom set up with a table and a tablecloth, and they had to do the place setting, and they had to take a customer's order, and they had to bust the table at the end. And we did take it one step further. I actually made them take it to our kitchen area in the other classroom, and I made them wash the dishes. So
kind of get it all in when you can. Super. Do you have any other questions for us at this time, Ryan? We will take questions.
A couple, but given the time, I think we should jump back into the presentation so that we can make sure that we make it through everything. And then at the end, I'll send these other questions over to you.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to just try and add a little bit more to what Holly had shared for you in terms of what the materials actually look like. And in fact, we have created some new bundles that were really kind of specially designed for working with the school health folks, and I'll share a little bit about them. One of them is our adapted career exploration, which has evidence-based practices that are blended in, that are those type that are really great for students, like Holly was talking about her students, and the MOD and mild MOD, intellectually delayed, but also for students on the spectrum. And they're about a 10 through 20 day scope and sequence, about a month a piece for each of these titles, and then knowledge-based as well as competency-based. And they include the same activity at different levels, both reading level and really functional levels. So 3rd through 5th and 2nd through 4th, plus some audio for our non-verbal students. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again. It was endorsed by the CASE Foundation. That was really a really big thing. Here are some of those evidence-based practices, the visual learning supports in our vocabulary board, or a visual schedule, and also video modeling. And I've got an example of one of the video modeling to share with you in a little bit. But there's really just about everything that you might need within there, and it's aligned both to your academics as well as to CTE or vocational kinds of settings. There's also a kit that we put together, which I think is really unique, and that is addressing STEM jobs, STEM careers for students with special needs. It's the same sort of a formula, right? Same recipe, different ingredients, about a 10 through 20 hour scope and sequence, about a month, with the knowledge and based pre and post tests, as well as those work performance benchmarks, those competency-based types of activities. And we've got the caregiver, carpentry, small engine repair, and then some life skills blended in, managing your money, measurements, and problem solving. So those are, that's kind of a unique bundle. And excuse me. And then we have a life skills bundle that we put together. And this is important too, because we can teach students the skills that they need for a job, but then this helps them find a job and keep a job. Again, it is a full curriculum. This one's about 10 hours per title, again, with 2 different reading levels. And you can see here, job prep and employability, independent living, self-confidence and social skills, and health and nutrition. So those are just a couple of the kits that we put together. Now what I'd like to do is, introduce to you some remote teaching tips, just kind of summarize that for you, that we had garnered from folks like Holly in the past 10 months that we've been doing this. So we mentioned a lot of using household items. Well, here's one bright idea. From our kit, we have things like Petri dishes and seed packets that could go home if your students are still working remotely. But then we suggested that parents could find maybe a shoebox, or if you can collect donations of shoebox to provide for them, with some saran wrap to make a little mini greenhouse. And that's an easy way to kind of take the experience that you would normally be getting and bring it on into a home setting. Or one of our more popular kits, the skin and nail care, right? So we're talking about giving students steps for being able to apply makeup or apply nail polish and do a manicure. It's a very, very popular kit, but there are certainly a lot of these. We've actually gone through our entire curriculum, and we've got examples from throughout the whole curriculum about things that you could find around the house fairly easily. Another remote teaching tip is to borrow from our friends in general ed something called flipping the classroom. And I wonder how many people have heard of it. It is something that was started by the Khan Academy to address homework fatigue, right? So kids were going home and not doing homework or doing the homework, and it wasn't reinforcing the right skills because they didn't know what was going on. Well, with flipping the classroom in that model, you would do the homework in school and the instruction at home. That's the flip. So how do you do that? Well, as we mentioned before, we've got video modeling. So here's an example of some video modeling, and I'm going to let it play through a little bit. Let me move it forward. So
napkin,
these are the things you need to
fork,
get from your kit.
knife, spoon, glass, lunch menu, guest check, picture cards, play money.
All right. And I'm going to move it ahead. He's going to say you need to get a pencil and you need
Greet
to
your
get
customer. You may say,
calculator.
welcome, or how are you today?
Welcome.
Give him or her a menu. Give your customer a glass of water. Get your guest check and pencil. Ask the customer if he or she is ready to order. You may say, "May I take your order?" Or, "Are you ready to order?"
May I take your order?
The customer will use the menu.
All right, and I'll drop the sound for a moment, but you get the concept that the video modeling provides students with the real experience that they could then, integrate and begin to follow through on. So if you had a student who is at home, having them work on watching this at home, or watching the PowerPoints or looking at the visual schedules, and when they come into school the next day or whenever their time is, or if you have a remote time with them, you might be working with things that take the extension of that activity. So like we have role-playing activities to do, or these situation cards, so that you have opportunity to dialogue now. And I love these because, listen to one. Miriam is bussing a table. As she carries the bus tray into the kitchen, a glass falls to the floor. The glass breaks. What should you do? Well, that's certainly a question I want to have a dialogue with my students about before they're out in the job setting, before that happens, and then they might, have a little bit of a meltdown. So that's just one suggestion, is flipping the classroom. Third suggestion is social stories. And boy, I love social stories. I've always done this with kids. And we have within the curriculum some social stories that are already included. So in the caregiver kit, we talk about going to a nursing home and better understanding what's going on there, so that if you were able to have a field trip, they would have an anticipatory set and know what to do. So that's great. Unfortunately, right now, we're probably not going to any nursing homes, so this is a great way to expose them to that. Or, like Holly said, you can take your phone and go ahead and snap pictures of your student doing various tasks. So planting the seeds, setting the table, changing the oil in the small engine repair kit, and go ahead and use our social stories as a template to substitute your pictures in. And now you've got yet another way of representing that task. So when we talk about universal design for learning, multiple ways of representation, we've got visual stories, we've got PowerPoints, you can make a social story, multiple ways. That's the repetition that we all know, but you don't want to do the same. You want to change it up. We mentioned that each of the activities or the curriculum have pre and post tests. And so we've had people who took Google Forms, and because you can use our little thumb drive to just copy and paste, I did this one myself. It took me about 2 minutes to go ahead and pop it on into a Google Form where students could be taking that pre-test online and thus be able to make it a little easier on you. You don't have to keep any scorekeeping going on. So that's another thing, to use those kind of cool apps like that. And then a fifth suggestion that was kind of neat was hosting some sort of a virtual career fair or a career day, and letting students go maybe round robin in a Zoom or a Google Meets, and share what they've learned, share social stories, share pictures of them doing things around and about. We certainly have had great career fairs in schools at other times. And to add to that, another special part of it would be to have students who, to have the employers kind of come on in to those career fairs, people within your community who are open. And I just want to share one with you real quick here. And this is Mike Way from the Resource Center.
And reuse items that have another life to live.
So that's what they do.
The Project Discovery kits that we've got here, I've noticed that they come in with a whole variety of skills and abilities.
Real tools.
When I come in work in the mornings, I make sure everything clean, everything put up, ready for shopping. Make sure nothing on the floor that can break or get hurt on anybody on the floor. Project Discovery, cleaning and maintenance help me do my job. In the milk kit, I learned how to sort and then do it here.
If he hadn't gone through this program, I can't imagine what his life would be. Ryan would do anything I asked him to do and do it well. I had to stay on my toes because he'd get a job done so fast and come back and say, well, now what can I do? He actually is employed now with this, and he's been a joy to have.
That's what we're looking for. Somebody who's got his best own personal life.
Resource Depot is a
Whoops, so don't go again, please. We'll move you up to the forward. So those are our 5 tips. We've done a number of different workshops on it. I hope they help you in some way, shape, or form. And Ryan, I think we've got a couple of minutes if you've got a question that you want to share with us.
We do have a couple more questions here. We'll see if we can get through them quickly. First of all, I saw a question from Judith wondering if Joyce, yourself, and Holly would be available for questions at another time. And I see that you've both listed your email addresses and your phone numbers here on the screen, and we appreciate your generosity with sharing that information. So Judith, if you do have questions for the presenters at a later time, their contact information is here for you. I've got a question from
with Dr. Ray from School Health. He and I also have talked about being able to do like our own, like a Zoom overview or a personal overview for people in their districts. So you can contact School Health and Dr. Ray or any of the folks that you know at School Health, and we're happy to do that and kind of re-deliver. So you can, I have got people who've brought in like a whole team of teachers and just said, okay, let's take a look at this and see what to do.
Yes, absolutely. And we're happy to help you out here on the School Health side. We do have Dr. Ray Hype available. We've got Terry Griffin, who is an expert in this area. And then we've got many of you know reps from School Health that work with you on a day-to-day basis. So we're all happy to help jump in and work through situations with you. I've got a question, Joyce. I'll probably direct this to you. It's a question from Misty, and she's asking about the nature of the kits. She says how many kits are included, but I wonder if perhaps she means how many students would a kit accommodate. Can you just speak to the nature of the kits?
Sure. The kits are intended to be at a site and to be shared amongst the site. So, you know, we're typically working in a special ed environment, which could be 611 and 811, 1213. There's lots of different configurations, but it's usually, you know, our typical smaller class sizes. And the materials are largely real tools. So there are about 3% or so which are consumables. So you might, you know, need to go out and get new Petri dishes and packets of seeds in year 2. But for the most part, they will accommodate a site level, I'd say maybe 3-4 classes worth at a time in a semester. And it really does depend on your class sizes. The nice part about them is that they are a one-time purchase. So once you have that kit, you can really be doing that every year, come back and do, you know, phase 2.
Wonderful. That's great information. Thank you, Joyce. And it looks like, unfortunately, we're reaching the top of the hour. And so I'm going to go ahead and close us for the day. I would like to thank everybody for attending the webinar today. We hope that you found the information useful and that you've learned new skills and information that you can take back to your classrooms. I'd like to thank Joyce Whitby and Holly Myers for joining us today and sharing their wealth of knowledge with us. As you're exiting the webinar today, you will see a brief survey come up on your computer, and we'd ask that you please participate in the survey to kind of give us some feedback on the things that we're doing here. If there are things that you didn't see that you would like to see, or something that you might like to see differently, please participate in that survey and let us know. And again, just a reminder for everyone, you will be receiving this presentation in a recorded version through your email. You will also receive a certificate of attendance with your email that comes in later today. And with that, I will go ahead and end the broadcast. Again, thank you all for joining us and have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Thank you.